Good afternoon or good evening, depending on where you might be. My name is Kevin Michael Grace, and this is the KMG show. So let's start with some breaking news from the Daily Mail. Fury, as just one cop is charged with wanton endangerment in Breonna Taylor death and two others walk free. Kentucky Attorney General says cops were justified in shooting because her boyfriend shot first and says mob justice isn't justice. A Kentucky grand jury on Wednesday indicted former Louisville detective Brent Hankinson for want of endangerment. In connection to Breonna Taylor's fatal shooting in March, Hankinson, who was fired from the police force in June, was charged with 3 counts of the Class D felony for wantonly firing his gun into an adjoining apartment. Sergeant Jonathan Mattingly and Detective Miles Cosgrove, who were also present at the time of Taylor's death, were not charged. State Attorney General Daniel Cameron addressed the decision in a press conference in Frankfort, Kentucky, confirming Hankinson. Louisville Mayor Greg Fisher on Wednesday also announced a 72-hour curfew for the city beginning at 9 p.m. City officials are bracing for further unrest ahead of the highly anticipated decision, which comes 6 months after Taylor's death. Fisher declared a state of emergency on Tuesday, hours after police said they would restrict access in the city's downtown area. So, have the riots broken out yet? See if Drudge has anything on this. Nothing that I can see, but if the rest of the year is any indication, then yes. Oh, here we go. Here's a follow-up story. Louisville erupts. Police and protesters in violent clashes after no officers are charged with killing Breonna Taylor as National Guard prepares for 9 p.m. curfew. Hundreds of people were gathered in Jefferson Square Park on Wednesday when the grand jury handed down its decision. They erupted in anger, disgust, and mourning. And immediately began marching through the streets. Clashes quickly broke out between police and protesters as the crowds encroached on lines of officers. Cops fired pepper balls at demonstrators who refused to pull back, and multiple people were detained. Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear deployed the National Guard in anticipation of nighttime violence. And in other parts of the city, members of armed far-right groups, the Boogaloo Boys and the Proud Boys, prepared to face off with Taylor protesters. Other cities across the country, such as New York City and Chicago, are also preparing for a night of unrest. It seems kind of curious to me, given how important this story has, with all of these famous people wearing Say Her Name shirts and chanting that out, that I haven't come across what I would consider to be a detailed examination of that police raid. I'm not particularly keen on no-knock police raids because they often lead to incidents such as the death of Breonna Taylor. Is it really necessary to come smashing through the door to arrest a drug dealer? I don't know, but in the absence of further facts, that's all I'll say now. So, Seattle, which was the scene of Chaz and Chop earlier this year, and City Hall being stormed by the followers of one of the council persons there, and with the mayor, the left-wing mayor's home, being besieged by BLM and Antifa protesters. Seattle has decided to make a significant cut in the police department, overriding the mayor's veto. And this, again, from the Daily Mail, Seattle pays convicted pimp $150,000 to be its street czar and come up with alternatives to policing as he boasts he can talk to gangsters and prostitutes who won't sit down with anybody else. Andre Taylor signed a $12,500 a month deal with the city July 27th to work as its community liaison, according to the contract published by Publicola last week. His nonprofit, Not This Time, will provide recommendations to the city on de-escalation, community engagement, and alternatives to policing. Mayor Jenny Durkin's office said the partnership would help de-escalate the ongoing situation by tapping into Taylor's lived experience. I'll have a little more to say about lived experience a bit later. In 2016, Taylor vowed to go to war with Seattle after his brother Che Taylor was shot dead by cops. Taylor then set up Not This Time, which champions statewide police reforms. This year, he emerged as an ally to Mayor Durkin, speaking out against the controversial CHOP zone, where 2 people were shot dead. He was then exposed in a secret recording offering to negotiate a $1 million package with the city on behalf of CHOP occupiers in exchange for them leaving. Back in 2000, Taylor was convicted of 7 prostitution-related counts. I'm looking at 2 pictures of him here, that is to say, Andre Taylor. And in the picture on the left, he's wearing a very spiffy suit, shirt, and tie combination with a tie clasp. The one on the right, he's got sort of, how would I put it, a sort of pseudo-Muslim attire going, skinny white pants, winkle pecker black shoes, and this kind of, I don't know, it's kind of a skirt which goes down to almost his knees, and it's adorned with various sorts of symbols on the arms and going up to the neck. He looks a very different man, but of course, America went through all of this in the 1960s. Tom Wolfe famously wrote about it in an essay called Mau-Mauing the Flak Catchers. That is to say, community organizers, aka gangsters, street people, would show up and Mau-Mau, that is to say, terrorize city officials and say, give us Gibbs or the city is going to burn down. And a lot of Gibbs were handed out. Not that it made much difference, but now we're back to that sort of thing again. And it's been a shame to see the deterioration of Seattle in recent years, but of course it's only going to get worse now. It's only going to get much worse. We're really expected to believe that in these wellness checks and the like, that we're not going to have police who are armed to defend themselves against people who are often crazy and violent. No, social workers of a type are going to be sent in, and they are not going to be armed. So as soon as crazy people start acting crazy and violent, I would expect that the social workers would make a beeline for the door. Because what else are they going to do? Let's see, let's have a look at the chat. Heck McNeck says, good afternoon, Kevin and fam. Everyone ready to watch Louisville burn tonight? Chad Chadson, our valiant moderator, says, hey, friends, please like, share, and subscribe. Indeed. He adds, there are hundreds of armed militiamen converging on Louisville as we speak. Tonight's going to get spicy. This was not a no-knock raid? Oh, okay. Well, it's been reported many times as having been a no-knock raid. I remember at the time when I was working in San Diego, when there were numerous incidents of these drug busts, which ended with shooting. And G. Gordon Liddy got into some trouble because he advocated people defending themselves because many of these drug raids were in error. Prison snitches getting lowered sentences for outrageously false and obviously false stories of respected members of the community being big-time drug dealers. Yo Mama says, the truth does not matter from a sociological perspective. Tricky Woo says, Taylor's boyfriend says police knocked. No, it really doesn't matter from a sociological perspective because LeBron James, King James, as they call him, has said that every time black people leave their house, they're being hunted down. Now, does he really believe this? I mean, I suppose you could look at the demeanor of black men and women on the street. Did they look cowed? Did they look as if they're being actively hunted down? Chocokin666 says, Debreus, did you see LeBron James with the frilled neck piece? And again, Network did a good take on Mao's. Do we have something on LeBron James here? Is he, oh, okay. LeBron James insists he never condoned violence against police after pundit Candace Owens blamed the shooting of 2 LA deputies on the pea-brained Lakers star's rhetoric. Yeah. Following the shooting of Ahmaud Arbery, the famous jogger in Georgia, James tweeted back in May that black men were, quote, literally hunted, unquote, whenever they leave home. Well, if you're being literally hunted and you have the right of self-defense, well, I suppose listeners can put 2 plus 2 together. James didn't call for violence in his May 6th tweet. Yeah, okay. That's who we go to for our wisdom. But let's talk about happier subject. International sleazeball of mystery, Hunter Biden. His full name is Robert Hunter Biden. He was born in February 1970, and he's described by Wikipedia as an American lawyer and investment advisor who is the second son of former U.S. VP Joe Biden. He is a founding partner of Rosemont Seneca Partners, an investment and advisory firm. Rosemont Seneca. Doesn't that rather sound like, what was it? Oakwood Stratton? The famous boiler room from New York that's been the subject of 2 movies. I believe one was called Boiler Room and the other one was Wolf of Wall Street. Biden is the second son of Joe Biden's first wife, Nelia. He attended a Catholic high school in Delaware, and he graduated from Georgetown with a bachelor's degree in history. And he later went to Georgetown Law, but transferred to Yale, where he graduated in 1996. He took a position then in MBNA, a major bank holding company, which was also a major contributor to his father's political campaign. He had risen by 1998 to the rank of executive vice president. From 1998 to 2001, he served in the United States Department of Commerce, focusing on eco-commerce. Ooh. He became a lobbyist in 2001, co-founding the firm of Oldeker, Biden, and Blair. According to Adam Entis of The New Yorker, Biden and his father established a relationship in which Biden wouldn't ask Hunter about his lobbying clients, and Hunter wouldn't tell his father about them. Well, I would think that if the president of the United States has appointed your father point man, that was the term that was used, for American involvement in the Ukraine, and your son is engaged in business activities there, said son would actually talk about it, because there's, big time conflict of interest possible there. In 2006, he was appointed by President George W. Bush to a 5-year term on the board of directors of Amtrak, where he served until 2009. Oh, and who else is involved with this? A fellow named Christopher Hines. Yes, that would be of Senator Hines of Pennsylvania, whose widow, one of the richest women in America, married John Kerry, who, of course, also is involved in current news. In September 2019, President Trump falsely claimed that Biden walked out of China with $1.5 billion in a fund. Oh, falsely claimed. Yes, he accused Biden of malfeasance in Ukraine. Busy man. In April 24th, after the Ukrainian Revolution, that is to say the illegal coup d'etat in the Ukraine, Biden joined the board of Burisma Holdings, one of the largest independent natural gas producers in Ukraine, owned by Ukrainian oligarch and former politician Mykola Zlochevsky. who faced a money laundering investigation at the time. Biden, then an attorney with Boies Schiller Flexner, was hired to help Burisma with corporate governance best practices, and a consulting firm in which Biden is a partner was also retained by Burisma. Chris Hines, John Kerry's stepson, opposed his partners Devon Archer and Hunter Biden joining the board in 2014 due to the reputational risk. Biden served on the board of Burisma until his term expired in April 2019, receiving compensation of up to $50,000 per month in some months. Because Vice President Biden played a major role in U.S. policy towards Ukraine, some Ukrainian anti-corruption advocates and Obama administration officials expressed concern that Hunter Biden, having joined the board, could create the appearance of a conflict of interest and undermine Vice President Biden's anti-corruption work in Ukraine. While serving as vice president, Joe Biden joined other Western leaders in encouraging the government of Ukraine to fire the country's top prosecutor, Viktor Shokin, who was widely criticized for blocking corruption investigations. Yeah, except for the one involving Burisma, apparently. In May 2013, Hunter Biden's application for position in the U.S. Navy Reserve was approved. At age 43, Biden was accepted as part of a program that allows a limited number of applicants with desirable skills to receive commissions and serve in staff positions. Yes, the U.S. Navy Reserve is always looking for corporate flacks. He received an age-related waiver and a waiver due to a past drug-related incident and was sworn in as a direct commission officer. Joe Biden administered his commissioning oath in a White House ceremony. The following month, Biden tested positive for cocaine during a urinalysis test and was subsequently discharged. Biden attributed the result to smoking cigarettes he had accepted from other smokers, only later suspecting they had been laced with the drug. Biden said, that is, Hunter Biden had said in an interview that he had smoked cocaine previously, but it had no effect on him. I have no experience with smoking cocaine, but I've seen much testimony to the contrary. That is indeed a very powerful drug. Biden married Kathleen Bula in 1993, and they have 3 children, Naomi, Finnegan, and Maisie. The couple separated in 2015 and divorced in 2017. In 2016, he began dating Haley Biden, the widow of his brother, Beau. That's what's called incest. They ended their relationship by late 2017 or early 2018. Biden is also father of a child born to London Alexis Roberts in Arkansas in August 2018. Having initially denied the existence of a previous sexual relationship, in May 2019, Biden married Melissa Cohen, a South African filmmaker, and Wikipedia doesn't tell you that they were married after having known each other for 10 days. 10 days. So an amusing story from The New Yorker last year: will Hunter Biden jeopardize his father's campaign? Joe Biden's son is under scrutiny for his business dealings and tumultuous personal life. Let's find there's a lot of stripper names in this story. Someone called Puma, and that is not an actual name, but let's see. I've got another story here about Hunter Biden. He's such a rascal. Such a rascal, that young man. And he was involved with renting a car with ID that was not his, and for purposes of drug use. This is from Headline USA. Hunter Biden, son of presidential candidate and former VP Joe Biden, allegedly stole his deceased brother's identity to hide his location, according to a private investigator. Dominic Casey gave his report to an Arkansas court hearing a paternity lawsuit made against Biden by London Alexis Roberts, a former stripper. Roberts, who says Hunter Biden privately acknowledged fathering her child, has accused him of multiple criminal probes involving fraud, money laundering, and a counterfeiting scheme. Now, this is where it gets good. In the investigator's filing, he said that evidence obtained by police indicated Biden had used false identification to hide the fact he had checked into an Arizona rehabilitation facility. The fraudulent documents were found inside Biden's Hertz rental car on October 28, 2018. Quote, a bag containing the suspicious items, a cellular telephone belonging to Shauna Strangler, who is also known as Puma Saint Angel, and a Delaware Attorney General badge belonging to Hunter Biden's deceased brother, Joseph R. Bo Biden III. So apparently he not only took his wife, took the widow, he took his AG badge as well. A web search revealed that St. Angel presently runs a lifestyle center in Sedona, Arizona that provides colonic hydrotherapy. Roberts is demanding sole custody of their child in court, claiming Biden wouldn't even be able to identify the child out of a photo lineup. Biden's lawyers have dismissed the private investigator's finding as a scheme by a non-party simply to make scandalous allegations in the pending suit. However, some of the details provided already were public knowledge, having emerged in a New Yorker profile last July. Hydrotherapy. I love that. It used to be called colonic therapy. Yes, it's given how tumultuous Hunter Biden's life has been. One wonders why all of these governments would be so eager to get into business with him. Now, yeah, you want to hear a great shit that never happened tech story? Well, Hunter was a student at Georgetown in the early 90s. He took up smoking Marlboro Red cigarettes. Ooh, cigarettes, scary. And occasionally he used cocaine. Once hoping to buy cocaine, he was sold a piece of crack, but he wasn't sure how to take the drug. Now, we're going to assume that Hunter Biden has never seen a movie or a TV series. I didn't have a stem, Hunter said. I didn't have a pipe. Improvising, he stuffed the crack into the cigarette and smoked it. It didn't have much of an effect. That would suggest to me a very high tolerance indeed. Let's get back to Arizona. Hunter said, okay, one night outside a club on Hollywood Boulevard, this is from the New Yorker profile, a Hunter and another man got into an argument. A group of bouncers intervened. A friend of one of the bouncers, a Samoan man who went by the nickname Baby Down, felt sorry for Hunter and took him to Mel's Drive-In to get some food and to his hotel to pick up his belongings. Early on the morning of October 26th, Baby Down dropped Hunter off at the Hertz rental office at the LA International Airport. Hunter said that at that point he had not slept for several days. Driving east on Interstate 10 just beyond Palm Springs, he lost control of his car, which jumped the median and skidded to a stop on the shoulder of the westbound lane. He called Hertz, which came to collect the damaged car and gave him a second rental. Later, on a sharp bend on a mountainous road, Hunter recalled a large barn owl flew over the hood of the car and then seemed to follow him, dropping in front of the headlights. He said he has no idea whether the owl was real or a hallucination. On the night of October 28th, Hunter dropped the car off at a Hertz office in Prescott, Arizona, and Grace Grove sent a van to pick him up. Zachary Romfo, who worked at the Hertz office in Prescott, told me she found a crack pipe in the car and on one of the consoles, a line of white powder residue. Bo Biden's Attorney General badge was on the dashboard. Hertz called the Prescott Police Department, and officers there filed a narcotics offense report listing the items seized from the car, including a plastic baggie containing a white powdery substance, a Secret Service business card, credit cards, and Hunter's driver's license. He must have been in a hurry to get away. Later, according to a police report, Secret Service agents informed Prescott police that Hunter was secure/well. Subsequent test results indicated the glass pipe contained cocaine residue, but investigators didn't find any fingerprints on it. Public prosecutors in the county and the city declined to bring a case against Hunter, citing a lack of evidence that the pipe had been used by him. John Palladini, Prescott's city attorney, told me that he was not aware of any requests by officials in Washington to drop the investigation into Hunter. It's a very Republican area, he said. I don't think political favors necessarily would even work had they been requested. On December 6, 2016, Kathleen filed for divorce. That's his wife, his first wife. And in February 2017, she filed a motion in D.C. Superior Court seeking to freeze Hunter's assets, alleging that he, quote, created financial concerns for the family by spending extravagantly on his own interests, including drugs, alcohol, prostitutes, strip clubs, and gifts for women with whom he has sexual relations, while leaving the family with no funds to pay legitimate bills, unquote. The motion was leaked to the New York Post, along with the revelation that Hunter and Haley were dating. Kathleen told friends that she felt ostracized by the Biden family. Hunter denied hiring prostitutes and said that he hadn't been to a strip club in years. But he said the evening the story was published, I went directly to a strip club. I said, fuck them. Obviously, the sort of a deeply responsible person that governments, including the Ukraine, and or top companies in an oligarchical society like the Ukraine and China, which is all oligarchy, you'd want to get involved with this fellow, because that couldn't possibly turn to grief. KMG is getting more and more nasally each day, says YT. Why are Americans so nasally? But I'm not an American. I could speak in a deeper voice like this. Is that better? Great Lakes nationalist, Biden is of a type with Bill Clinton. Well, yes. Bill Clinton seemed to get into an enormous amount of scrapes, but Bill Clinton has this charm. I haven't heard anyone speak of Hunter Biden's charm. Okay, I watched those marches live and recognized all those people. I see no mention on social media today of militia marches there, says Tweety Bird. Proud Boys, how many members would the Proud Boys actually have, particularly after they were smacked down by the justice system? You know, Joe Biden is constantly talking about his dead son. And it seems fairly obvious, because he has this dead son, who served his country abroad in the military, died sadly of cancer, and he has this crackhead, incestuous son. But isn't there a risk there that in talking about one son that you're going to remind people of the other son? For a Canadian, the KMG show hardly ever uses the pronounced long O. It's a release to not have him say, I don't know how to say that. But yes, Kerry is partly Scots-Irish. Indeed, he is. That footage looks like it's actually from a couple of weeks ago, which it may well be. We have seen this constantly in the media, showing video, showing pictures from events which had happened in that previous place some time ago, or in some place, I don't know, thousands of miles away. But as I say, Hunter Biden is in the news again today because there was a Senate report that was released called Hunter Biden, Burisma and Corruption, the Impact on U.S. Government Policy and Related Concerns, from the U.S. Senate Committee on Homeland Security and Government Affairs and the U.S. Senate Committee on Finance Majority Staff Report. I should point out, to be fair, that, of course, this Senate committee is dominated by Republicans, and also the complaints made by Hunter Biden's ex-wife. Extravagant claims, let me put it that way. Extravagant claims are often made, or they're almost the rule in divorce proceedings where there is any significant amount of money involved. This is, I'll just start reading from the executive summary here. In late 2013 and into 2014, mass protests erupted in Kiev, Ukraine, demanding integration into Western economies and an end to systemic corruption that had plagued the country. At least 82 people were killed during the protests, which culminated on February 21st when Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych abdicated by fleeing the country. Less than 2 months later, over the span of only 28 days, significant events involving the Bidens unfolded. On October 16, 2014, Vice President Biden met with his son's business partner, Devon Archer, at the White House. Wait a minute. I thought they didn't know about each other's activities. 5 days later, Vice President Biden visited the Ukraine, and he soon after was described in the press as the public face of the administration's handling of Ukraine. The day after his visit, on April 22nd, Archer joined the board of Burisma. 6 days later, on April 28th, British officials seized $23 million from the London bank accounts of Burisma's owner, Mykola Zlochevsky. 14 days later, on May 12th, Hunter Biden joined the board of Burisma. And over the course of the next several years, Hunter Biden and Devon Archer were paid millions of dollars from a corrupt Ukrainian oligarch for their participation on the board. The 2014 protests in Kiev came to be known as the Revolution of Dignity. Quite honestly, that is the first time I've heard this phrase used. But perhaps, I don't know, I must have read dozens or hundreds of articles about this phrase, Revolution of Dignity. Maybe it's one of those things like, Juneteenth, and lift every heart and sing. Oh, yes, it was always called that. Yes, of course, it was always called that. Which described a revolution against corruption in Ukraine. Following that revolution, Ukrainian political figures were desperate for U.S. support. Yes, because they had, officials of several countries, including the United States and Canada, had conspired to illegally overthrow Ukraine's government and replace it with a very strange combination, a Jewish oligarch / neo-Nazi coalition. Very, very strange. Only in Ukraine. And of course, the Ukraine only exists as a country because of an enormous amount of money that is doled out by Western countries. And as I never tire of pointing out, Belarus, which is, there's another attempted color revolution going on there. Belarus, which is not known as a particularly wealthy country, that its per capita income is more than twice that of Ukraine. And given all of the resources that the Ukraine possesses, this tells me that their wealth is being stolen. So this report goes on to thousands of words, but I'm just going to quote from some stories which quote from the report. And of course, John Kerry is involved. This is from The Hill. Two Senate Republican chairmen on Wednesday released findings for the months-long investigation into the Bidens, arguing that Hunter Biden's work for a Ukraine gas company cast a shadow over Obama-era policy. The controversial report from Senators Ron Johnson of Wisconsin and Chuck Grassley of Iowa, both Republicans, comes only weeks before the November presidential election and days before the first debate between President Trump and Joe Biden, raising concerns among Democrats that the two are trying to interfere in the presidential election and could spread Russian disinformation. Oh, interfering in American election. Yeah, this all goes back to the Ukraine. It was never about Russia. It was always about the Ukraine. Now, so here you have a country which, present version of which came about through various dubious circumstances, which is desperate for Western money. And what better way to get Western money than to grease the palms of Western politicians and middlemen? The GOP senators acknowledge in the report it's not clear how much U.S. policy was impacted because of Hunter Biden's work for Ukraine gas company Burisma Holdings, but they argue it created an awkwardness for the Obama-era State Department. Apparently, it wasn't considered awkward when Joe Biden boasted in public, caught on video, that he had demanded, that he, the Vice President of the United States, had demanded the firing of the Ukraine's top prosecutor. So apparently Russia interfered too much in Ukrainian affairs. Of course, Russia and Ukraine are kind of been like joined at the hip for what, 900,000 years, something like that. Kiev and Rus, you know. But no. So now the Ukraine's in a position where the vice president of the United States can demand the firing of its chief prosecutor, and it will be done. Two officials, George Kent, who is currently serving as Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for European and Eurasian Affairs, and Amos Hochstein, a senior Obama-era State Department official, both told the committee that they raised concerns about Hunter Biden's work and the potential conflict of interest with U.S.-Ukraine policy, according to the report. Kent's concerns went unaddressed, and in September 2016, he emphasized in an email to his colleagues, furthermore, the presence of Hunter Biden on the Burisma board was very awkward for all U.S. officials pushing an anti-corruption agenda in Ukraine. Yeah, awkward. That's one way to put it. Here's a story from Daily Wire, Ryan Saavedra. A bombshell report from this Senate committee makes a series of damning new allegations against Hunter Biden. The report outlined the following key findings. Yes, more about awkwardness here. Wow, this word awkward. Oh, and here's the woman. Here's the woman who is most directly responsible for the illegal coup in the Ukraine. Here she is mentioned. Former Assistant Secretary of State for European and Eurasian Affairs, Victoria Nuland, testified that confronting oligarchs would send an anti-corruption message in Ukraine. Kent told the committees that Zlochevsky was an odious oligarch. However, in December 2015, instead of following U.S. objectives of confronting oligarchs, Vice President Biden's staff advised him to avoid commenting on Zlochevsky and recommended he say, "I'm not going to get into naming names or accusing individuals." Yes, so much for the anti-corruption campaign. And what do we know about Victoria Nuland? Oh, she is married to a man called Robert Kagan, who is, I don't know, what, the neoconservatives, neoconservative? Apparently, according to Wikipedia, he prefers the term liberal interventionist to describe himself. A co-founder of the neoconservative Project for the New American Century, he is a senior fellow at Brookings and a member of the Council on Foreign Relations. He has been a foreign policy advisor to U.S. Republican presidential candidates as well as Democratic administrations. That's what they call bipartisanship. During the 2016 U.S. presidential election campaign, Kagan left the Republican Party due to the party's nomination of what he described as, quote, fascist, unquote, Donald Trump. Yes, he left the Republican Party. I'm reminded of the old story that when Milton Berle, the comedian, announced that he was leaving Judaism for Christian Science, Oscar Levant, the great wit, responded, "Our loss is their loss." It was one of the Kagan brothers. It was one of the Kagan brothers who Tucker Carlson, in his recent book, described as being particularly stupid. Okay, Hunter Biden was serving on Burisma's board, supposedly consulting on corporate governance and transparency. I just can't get enough of that phrase. When Zlochevsky allegedly paid a $7 million bribe to officials serving under Ukraine's prosecutor general, Vitaly Yarema, to shut the case against Zlochevsky. Kent testified that this bribe occurred in 2014, 7 months after Hunter joined Burisma's board. Hunter Biden was a U.S. Secret Service protectee from January 29, 2009 to July the 8th, 2014. A day before his last trip as a protectee, Time published an article describing Burisma's ramped-up lobbying efforts to U.S. officials and Hunter's involvement in Burisma's board. Before ending his protective detail, Hunter Biden received Secret Service protection on trips to multiple foreign locations, including Moscow, Beijing, Doha, Paris, Seoul, Manila, Tokyo, Mexico City, Milan, Florence, Shanghai, Geneva, London, Dublin, Munich, Berlin, Bogota, Abu Dhabi, Nairobi, Hong Kong, Taipei, Buenos Aires, Copenhagen, Johannesburg, Brussels, Madrid, Mumbai, and Lake Como. A lot of business done in Lake Como. So Hunter Biden truly is the international sleaze bag of mystery. In addition to the over $4 million paid by Burisma for Hunter Biden's and Archer's board memberships, Hunter Biden, his family, and Archer received millions of dollars from foreign nationals with questionable backgrounds. Archer received $142,300 from Kengiz Rakashev of Kazakhstan, purportedly for a car. Hunter Biden received a $3.5 million wire transfer from Elena Baturina, the wife of the former mayor of Moscow. Hunter Biden opened a bank account with Gong Wendong to fund a $100,000 global spending spree with James Biden and Sarah Biden. Hunter Biden had business associations with Wei Jianming, Gong Wendong, and other Chinese nationals linked to the communist government and the People's Liberation Army. Hunter Biden paid non-resident women who were nationals of Russia or other Eastern European countries and who appear to be linked to a, quote, Eastern European prostitution or human trafficking ring. This story, it's all yaboo in the media now. The mainstream media is largely ignoring this story because they are desperate that their boy, Joe Biden, be elected president. Yeah. Let's go back to the chat here. I mean, have you ever heard? I mean, sort of tops Bill Clinton there, doesn't it? I mean, Bill Clinton really only got on the gravy train after he left office. Okay. Y'all never heard the I Love My Dead Gay Son story from years ago? It's a meme. Yes, I've heard it. It's from the movie Heathers. Lamprey Mills says they supplied arms to a neo-Nazi regiment in the Ukrainian army to kill ethnic Russians. And someone repeats a famous rumor about Milton Berle, which I'm not going to repeat. Professor Pohl says we can shorten Kagan's ideological description down to wanker. Chad Chadson says, yes, that's from Ship of Fools, great book by Tucker Carlson. Chogokin 666 says, Lake Como is beautiful. So I have heard. But this guy, it just gives you, it really gives all of the details, just gives you, a tremendous flavor of just how corrupt the oligarchy in America has become. Okay, you're looking for a fixer. You're looking for a fixer with political connections, with family connections. This is the best guy that they could come up with? Did they feel sorry for him? Did they feel sorry for Joe Biden because of his son, Hunter? I mean, John S. says, I've seen no buffering since KMG upgraded his internet. Yeah, it's 100 times faster, the uploading now. So, what's up next? Oh, okay. This is certainly a fun presidential election campaign, is it not? I mean, it's also really scary. This is from BNN Bloomberg, Josh Wingrove. President Trump predicted that the U.S. Supreme Court will decide the outcome of the November election and argued the Senate should confirm his nominee to replace the late Justice RBG to break any tie. After again complaining about expansions of mail-in voting amid the coronavirus pandemic, Trump said Wednesday that, quote, I think this will end up in the Supreme Court and it's very important to have 9 justices. I think this scam that the Democrats are pulling, it's a scam. This scam will be before the U.S. Supreme Court, he told reporters at the White House. Lawyers representing Trump's campaign are challenging mail-in voting rules in a host of states. The president has repeatedly claimed without substantiation, well, actually, that mail-in voting is more susceptible to fraud than in-person voting on election day. Yes, of course it's more susceptible to fraud because you have to show up in person to vote. One, And in many, if not most jurisdictions, you have to present photo ID, claimed without substantiation. You know, reporters have this really stupid habit, which just gets worse over the years, of claiming that things which are obviously true are not obviously true because they have not been demonstrated to their satisfaction. Or, for instance, the Washington Post or New York Times has said they're not true. Remember years ago when BC had a NDP premier called Glenn Clark, the RCMP showed up at his house around 6 o'clock in the evening, and it was winter and it was dark. And a news station, the leading news station, was also called there. And you could see the police walking through the living room, and his wife, Glenn Clark's wife, seemed to be very, very upset. 2 days later, the RCMP raided Glenn Clark's office in Victoria. Glenn Clark's house was in Vancouver. The line from the RCMP was, "We will neither confirm nor deny that the Premier of British Columbia is under investigation." And the media ran with this line. They know very well, if they're not idiots, that if the police want to have a chat with you without embarrassing you, they arrange to have a plainclothes officer come around, see you. Sometime that's convenient, or maybe you can drop by their office. They don't raid your house and then your office carrying away documents. So Glenn Clark, whose approval rating was down to something like 11%, he was struggling to stay in office. And the Attorney General of British Columbia at the time was a man called Ujjal Dosanjh. And one Friday afternoon, he just happened to mention en passant that the Premier of BC, his boss, was under investigation by the police. And then, oh my God, Glenn Clark's under investigation by the police. Of course he's under investigation by the police. What is wrong with you? And Glenn Clark resigned, I believe, that same day. Okay, so Donald Trump is having a lot of fun on the campaign trail. And let's talk about some of it. Trump mocks Biden's appearance, mask use, ahead of the first debate. And he asked whether Biden is going to show up for the debate wearing a mask. And I would not be surprised, because he has done this bit with the mask when he is nowhere near anyone. He's done that several times. So Trump said at a campaign rally in Pittsburgh, this is according to The Hill, Biden feels good about the mask, and that's okay, whatever makes you feel good. And then, honestly, why the hell did he spend all that money on the plastic surgery if he's going to cover it up with a mask? Now, I'm waiting for the media to speak of unsubstantiated allegations that Joe Biden has had plastic surgery. Well, we know that he has had plastic surgery because he went bald, in his 40s or 50s? And he had the plugs done. And it looked terrible and didn't work. And then later hair transplanting got much, much better. And he had that done. Now that's a form of plastic surgery. But all you have to do is look at his face. He has the Joker look, that the skin has been stretched so tight that he looks like the Joker. In fact, one rather worries for him when he smiles, and he can't really give a big smile anymore. When he smiles, one fears that his skin is going to snap in several places. Some more action from Trump here. A few weeks ago, I banned efforts to indoctrinate government employees with divisive and harmful sex and race-based ideologies. Today, I've expanded that ban to people and companies that do business with our country, the United States military, government contractors, and grantees. Americans should be taught to take pride in our great country, and if you don't, there's nothing in it for you. From the Federalist, the Department of Justice introduced draft legislation to Congress Wednesday, outlining specific reforms requested by the agency in compliance with President Trump's executive order on preventing online censorship, which curtails big tech liability protections under Section 230 of the 1996 Communications Decency Act. The proposed reforms stem primarily from the department's recommendations in June, which were developed and released in response to the president's directive in May, seeking to roll back protections that provide blanket immunity to online platforms hosting third-party content. The Justice Department is taking specific aims at websites' content moderation to ensure an open forum in the 21st century digital public square. Currently, online platforms have been able to weaponize government protections initially implemented to encourage stripping down obscene content to selectively censor unwelcome narratives, i.e., conservative viewpoints. Google, for example, attempted to deplatform The Federalist early this year over content in the website's comment sections, despite the tech company's own comment section on YouTube being notorious for hosting some of the most nefarious material on the internet. In turn, the department is calling on Congress to pass its legislation clarifying existing language of the 1996 law that the agency says will shield arbitrary content moderation decisions with more concrete language that gives greater guidance to platforms, users, and courts to curb unfair censorship. For too long, Section 230 has provided a shield for online platforms to operate with impunity, Attorney General William Barr said. Ensuring that the internet is a safe but also vibrant, open, and competitive environment is vitally important to America. We therefore urge Congress to make these necessary reforms to Section 230 and begin to hold online platforms accountable, both when they unlawfully censor speech and when they knowingly facilitate criminal activity online. That's interesting of Trump, that typically presidential candidates get blander the closer they get to election day, and Trump is going in the opposite direction. I guess the idea is you should vote for me like you voted me in 2016 because of all of the exciting things that I'm going to be doing in my second term. Speaking of censorship, of course, Facebook censored video about Kyle Rittenhouse, who is accused of fatally shooting two men during the Jacob Blake riots in Kenosha. I don't think there's actually any doubt that he fatally shot two men during the Jacob Blake riots in Kenosha. But again, reporters have this habit, you know. An organization raising funds for Kyle Rittenhouse's legal defense published a viral video that tells the truth about the 17-year-old. Fight Back Foundation, a free speech group that raised nearly $2 million in funding for Rittenhouse's legal fees, posted the 11-minute footage to several alternative anti-big tech video sharing platforms. A downloadable version is available on the association's website. Every decade or so, a legal matter arises that holds the power to negatively affect our lives for generations to come. The video is prefaced, regardless of what side of the political spectrum you identify with, this is about you. To prevent the total destruction of their communities, Good Samaritans united to guard local businesses. The narrator continued, then naming Rittenhouse. Then graphics profiled the youth, listing his background as a lifeguard, reportedly trained in advanced life support with hundreds of hours of volunteered service to his community. So people are getting injured. Rittenhouse spoke on camera at the time. Our job is to protect this business. Part of my job is to help people. If there's somebody hurt, I'm running into harm's way. Rittenhouse then referred to his rifle as a means of protection, also demonstrating his medical kit strapped to his side. In one scene, Rittenhouse is shown alerting the public that he is an emergency medical technician. I'm an EMT, come to me, he ushered in a hurt individual grasping on two others for physical support. But then tensions rose as rioters sent a dumpster ablaze, moving it towards a gas station. A militia guard quickly extinguished the flames, angering the alleged fire starter, 36-year-old Joseph Don Rosenbaum, now known as one of the two Black Lives Matter activists allegedly shot dead by Rittenhouse. Rosenbaum's criminal history was outlined. The registered sex offender was convicted of sexual misconduct with a minor and crimes against children. Mark Dice tweets, hey, Ben Shapiro, next time you have a secret dinner with Mark Zuckerberg, ask him why Facebook is censoring people who post evidence that Kyle Rittenhouse acted in self-defense. Thanks. And there's a link here to an article from Politico, which is from last year. inside Mark Zuckerberg's private meetings with conservative pundits, the lengthy off-the-record gatherings were held at one of the Facebook founders' homes in California. They come as the social media giant fends off accusations of liberal bias. Useful idiots. They are everywhere. Oh, let's see. CNN commentator Mary Catherine Ham, very much a never Trumper, as I recall. Conservative commentator Ben Shapiro, AEI fellow and former Washington Free Beacon editor Matt Continenti, Bill Kristol's son-in-law, Town Hall editor and Fox News contributor Guy Benson, and Media Research Center founder Brent Bozell have also attended the dinners. Cruz, Senator Cruz from Texas, originally from Canada, of course, from Calgary. Trump really had a field day making fun of him in 2016, but there seems to have been a change come over Ted Cruz in the last year or so. He is what Gunnery Sergeant Hartman would have called born again hard. This is from the Dallas Morning News. The Senate on Tuesday failed to pass a resolution honoring the death of Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg after Texas Senator Ted Cruz objected to Democrats trying to insert a line about her dying wish that the vacancy be filled by the winner of this year's White House race. The Republican accused Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer of politicizing the ceremonial effort and turning a bipartisan resolution into a partisan resolution. Cruz laid into the Democrats over the complaints about the GOP moving ahead this year with a nomination. He then suggested that a line instead be subbed in to reflect Ginsburg's objections to packing the court with additional justices, an idea that's been floated as Democratic revenge. We are sadly seeing one side of the aisle embrace more and more dangerous and radical proposals, including trying to use brute political force to politicize the court. Cruz said that is not consistent with the Constitution. But Schumer was having none of it. Justice Ginsburg would easily see through the legal sophistry of the argument of the junior senator from Texas. He said, to turn Justice Ginsburg's dying words against her is so beneath the dignity of this body. You don't get to choose when your replacement will be made. This is the dying woman codicil. It's in there somewhere if you search hard enough. When a dying woman who is 87 years old, who's been on the court forever. Oh, this is her last wish. I don't know. Perhaps she should have made a video or something. I saw a picture of a bunch of women celebrating Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and they were all dressed like her, and they were all running. More misinformation from the Atlantic, more projection. President Trump's campaign is discussing contingency plans that would involve bypassing the result of November's election, reports the Atlantic. Yeah. The report delves into possible scenarios if Trump apparently loses the 2020 presidential election, but doesn't concede, noting that although we're used to electors being selected based on the popular vote, nothing in the Constitution says it has to be that way. Citing Republican Party sources, sure, the Republican Party sources. The Atlantic says that Trump's campaign is discussing contingency plans to bypass election results and appoint loyal electors in battleground states where Republicans hold the legislative majority. No, this is exactly what the Democrats want to get away with. The Atlantic has become the organ, the semi-official organ of America's color revolution. Speaking of which, I saw a tweet yesterday from a woman who works for the Wilson Center. Yeah, here we go. Someone just retweeted it. It's a very childish video by someone called Nina Yankovitz. You may have seen the term color revolution floating around social media the past few days. Let's talk about what they are and why the U.S. isn't the candidate for one. And then she goes on to explain that color revolutions, they're totally spontaneous. And they're all about bringing down tyranny. And, they're in no way the result of hostile actors, you know, like Victoria Nuland or George Soros. It's all goodness. Oh, and by the way, people have accused me, she says, of being involved in that sort of thing. But no, I'm not. And then later, when people made fun of her, she became tiresome. Oh, you're picking on me because I'm just a widow girl. Yeah, okay. But I watched her video, which is not very long, 2 minutes and 18 seconds. She makes a revealing admission that there's not going to be a color revolution, or it's unlikely there'll be a color revolution in the United States, because these color revolutions only come about after there has been a disputed vote. Oh, so on November 3rd, or shortly thereafter, serious accusations, from the New York Times, the Washington Post, and certainly the Atlantic will state that this is a disputed election, which fully justifies whatever measures are necessary to drag Trump out of the White House. So another story from the Mail. Representative Matt Gaetz of Florida has called for a criminal investigation into billionaire Mike Bloomberg, who paid off $20 million in debt for more than 31,000 convicted felons in Florida so they can vote in November. Bloomberg, who is worth more than $50 billion, raised more than $20 million to pay off fines, court fees, and restitution for felons, and pledged another $100 million to help Joe Biden win Florida. I believe there may be a criminal investigation already underway of the Bloomberg-connected activities in Florida, Gaetz told Fox News host Sean Hannity, accusing the former Democratic presidential candidate of attempting to buy votes for Biden. He explained, under Florida law, it's a third-degree felony for someone to either directly or indirectly provide something of value to impact whether or not someone votes. So the question is whether or not paying off someone's fines and legal obligations counts as something of value, and it clearly does. Let's go back to the chat here. Debrea says Ted Cruz looks like our Duvid when he used to shave. Heck McNeck used a naughty word. Okay. William Hicks says the Republicans really should just say, after the way the Democrats treated Kavanaugh, all bets are off. We're going to fill that seat, and that's just how it is. Chad Chatson says, I didn't see your comment. It must have been YouTube. Okay. All right. No, I saw one of these masks, or burlesques, to stop Kavanaugh involved these women. It was Handmaid's Tale, rape pen, this sort of thing. And again, I have to ask, do they really believe that? John S. says, no verifiable chain of custody with mail-in ballots. Perfect opportunity for fraud. Yes, exactly. Jonathan Pohl extols Tucker Carlson's book, which I reviewed on the old Luke Ford book club. I found it quite good. And I learned a lot from it, particularly how he described how Facebook uses algorithms to actually addict people to the use of Facebook. It's not enough that you're using Facebook. You've got to use it more and more and more. Keep checking in. Keep checking in for those dopamine hits. And, okay, pursuing something like 4 legal actions now, one of which is photographs which were taken on Vancouver Island back when I was living there, and she was living there, where, this was an invasion of my privacy. Well, 1, she was in public. 2, she had a big smile on her face as if she were posing for the camera. And it was one of the strangest get-ups I've ever seen. She had a baby strapped around her chest, a newborn baby or close to it. And she had 2 dogs on leashes at the same time. This does not strike me as a prudent way to take your baby out. From the Mail, Buckingham Palace has washed its hands of Prince Harry and Meghan Mertz after they told Americans to vote out Trump. A spokesman said it refused to comment on not a working member of the royal family in a stinging response to the couple. It comes after royal insiders said that the Duke and Duchess of Sussex crossed a line by speaking out about the US election on November 3rd. Prince Harry told voters to reject hate speech, while Meghan called the presidential race the most important election of our lifetime. How stupid must Prince Harry be? His name is Prince Harry of the British royal family, and he's getting personally involved in American presidential election. How stupid. Speaking in a Time 100 video message, apparently filmed from their California home, Harry admitted that he was not eligible to vote. Yeah. How long has he been living in the United States for? A few months? He's not an American citizen. Does he think that he could be an American citizen and still a member of the royal family? Well, Harry and Meghan did not name their favorite candidate. Many viewers thought it obvious they were backing Joe Biden over Donald Trump, though a source close to Harry denied this. A Buckingham Palace spokesman said, "We would not comment. The Duke is not a working member of the royal family, and any comments he makes are made in a personal capacity." Well, you see, the personal capacity of Prince Harry counts for very little. I don't know that it could be measured because he is a ginger-haired waster who bumbled through life, doing one embarrassing thing after another. And then he became involved with an American adventuress, and he was going to do the royal family in a different way, like helping people. What does he think when his relatives, I don't know, Princess Anne, or I could name many others, they are involved in what must be a tiring and boring work for charities, day after day, week after week, or just showing up to the village fete or whatever because people like to see the royals? But no, he was going to be doing things in a different way. As I say, he's a deeply, deeply stupid man. Royal experts told Mail Online that the couple should give up their titles and sever their links to the monarchy for good if they wanted to comment on U.S. politics, while insiders told the Times palace aides would be concerned about their intervention. Piers Morgan said Prince Harry poking his woke nose into the U.S. election and effectively telling Americans to vote against President Trump is completely unacceptable behavior. Former Liberal Democrat MP Norman Baker, author of the book And What Do You Do? What the Royal Family Doesn't Want You to Know, said Harry should not speak out about U.S. politics while he is still a representative of the UK. I think it's inappropriate for any private citizen to comment on the U.S. election. The problem is that Harry has retained his HRH status and is not a private citizen, but still a representative of this country, Baker said. He needs to stop trying to have a foot in both camps, royal when it suits him and private when it doesn't. Royal biographer Robert Jobson told Mail Online it may be easier for Meghan and Harry to give up the royal titles altogether, given the business and political agenda they may want to pursue. I don't really see that myself, because they are absolutely nothing without the royal family. Meghan Mertz is a 39-year-old actress who had a supporting role on a show called Suits, which was about lawyers, before she hooked up with the ginger waster. It didn't seem like Hollywood producers were, banging down her door to get her to appear in their movies or Netflix series or the like. Very entertaining site called harrymarkle.wordpress.com weighs in on that. When you think these Sussexes can't sink any lower, they astonish us all, and either they are incredibly desperate or just plain stupid. Whichever you decide, one thing for sure is that they lack morals and decency. Ruth Bader Ginsburg died sadly on 18th September 2020, and everyone expected MM to jump on that bandwagon, and she did, in what can only be described as a despicable act. Harry jumped on the Gurkha bandwagon, and that was equally abhorrent. Oxfam and the Gurkha Welfare Trust are jointly running a trail walker relay in September, later this month, to raise funds for the charities, and it is, of course, a worthy one. However, by now, most of the savvy human beings on this planet will have cottoned onto the fact that Harry latches himself like a leech to charities to gain a bit of publicity for himself. The charities think that it's great to get some PR exposure, but many fail to realize how toxic and unpopular the Sussex duo actually are, that the publicity gained will probably be negative. That's why it's taken me several days to write this out of pure disgust, and this is a feeling that is shared by many. I am also aware of the Famous Five case being reignited, but that deserves its own article, which will come out. Famous Five has to do with this dispute between Megan Mertz and her father about a letter which was supposed to be private, and then maybe it wasn't so private after all. And let's see, Jessica Mulroney, who's the daughter of former Canadian Prime Minister Brian Mulroney, has been dragged into this. She is alleged that she is one of the Famous Five. But of course, Jessica Mulroney denies this, but apparently Megan Mertz cut her loose when Jessica Mulroney got into a dispute with a woke black woman. They just can't, they're constantly stepping on rakes. They can't stop it. Let's see, Harry Markle says the people are getting tired and angry of the farce, and the latest is that Gloria Steinem has told the world that Megan Mertz made cold calls to voters. She's entitled to do so, as long as she renounces all her titles and makes no claim to them ever again. That's the deal in essence, and what MM wants, she doesn't always get. For starters, she didn't fool the British public, and she wanted to be loved and adored. We all know that's never going to happen, but she dragged Harry down with her. Maybe when they show their faces again in the UK, should they dare, instead of handing out flags to wave at them, perhaps boxes of rotten tomatoes would be more appropriate. Let's see, there's an article in the Federalist from Georgie Borman. Mask fanatics have officially abandoned science to control your life. It's nothing new for political religions, she writes, to produce radicals that develop their own sects or cults. This time around, rigid devotion to enforcing mask compliance has produced runaway fanaticism based on nothing but blind faith that more mask wearing is always better. Even the public health experts, whom these followers all promoted as great prophets just a month ago, can't tame their fervor. Well, the latrine wallahs have got the bit between their teeth, and they're not about to let go. That's a problem, because a return to normalcy will require subduing radical factions that agitate for oppression. Restrictions such as mask mandates are like oxygen to followers of radical fundamentalist COVIDianism. It's a tough one to say. The abiding belief that only lockdown, social distancing, and masks can deliver us from the deadly pandemic. The longer mandates stay in place and experts continue promoting mask use, my mask protects you, your mask protects me, and the stronger and more widespread the extremism will grow, and the less influence experts will have over the behavior. The weather changed here in suburban Vancouver rather dramatically overnight. Absolutely torrential rain and a stiff wind, a quite stiff wind. And I'm looking out my window, and there are people walking outside wearing masks. They're not next to each other. They're separated by 10, 15, 20, 50 feet. And as I say, raining heavily, stiff wind, and they're wearing masks. This really, this is like a sacrament, isn't it? The evidence is abundant, but consider these three cases of radical COVIDianism and how they trace back to the abandonment of the scientific standards necessary to maintain public health and a functioning society. First, Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer signed an executive order last week requiring all non-professional sports players to wear masks. Athletes, except for swimmers, is that coming soon? Swimmers must wear masks while training for, practicing for, or competing in an organized sport if they cannot consistently maintain 6 feet of distance. There are no age-specific exceptions in this requirement, so it appears Whitmer's mask mandate for children 5 years old and over applies. Not only does this order contradict guidance from so-called experts who say that people exercising should not wear masks because sweat can clog the mask fibers and make breathing difficult, as well as promote the growth of microorganisms, but it overrides Whitmer's own order specifying that masks do not have to be worn during exercise when wearing a face covering would interfere with the activity. Mask the babies. That's number 2. A WestJet flight was canceled last week because a 19-month-old could not keep her mask on, despite the fact that infants and toddlers simply aren't spreading the virus. The father, Safwan Chowdhury, called it horrific and dehumanizing treatment, which indeed it is. Transport Canada's official guidance for travelers says explicitly the following people should not wear a mask: children under 2 years old. Yet WestJet crew members, according to Chowdhury, wrongly cited the guidance as requiring his infant to wear a mask. Official rules are apparently no hindrance to the mask crusaders who will defend their universal masking standard to the point of canceling a flight. Third, not to be outdone in anti-science zeal for total conformity, however, we have the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources, which has asked agency employees to wear masks while teleconferencing from home. Natural Resources Secretary Preston Cole said in a July 31 email that in order to set a safety example showing that employees care about the safety and health of others, they should wear a mask while participating in virtual meetings that involve being seen. Does that go far enough? Perhaps they should be required to write on their foreheads, which are still visible, and I don't know. Is it right that their forehead should still be visible? Couldn't things be oozing out of the forehead that could spread coronavirus? They'd have to write, I care about other people, or I care about the safety of other people, or perhaps just, I care, in block capitals. Lockdowns were once called an unproven hypothesis by the Centers for Disease Control, its models of efficacy being unvalidated by empirical data. The World Health Organization called forced isolation and quarantine ineffective and impractical. Yet despite the devastating effects of banning non-essential businesses and social activities, countries around the world locked down. One can draw numerous examples of COVIDian jihad from any given week of these hellish past 6 months, but the progression is obvious. In April, a father was arrested for playing softball with his family in an open field in compliance with state orders. In July, a woman was berated by a fanatical old lady at the superstore for not masking her children, who are at risk approaching 0 for spreading the virus. Now heading into fall, some people are being asked to wear masks alone in their own homes, out in open parks, and while exercising. They're supposed to strap them onto infants and toddlers who are essentially at 0 risk for spreading the Wuhan virus. And they aren't ever supposed to complain about dental problems, headaches, or dizziness while mask wearing, because every good COVID fanatic knows masks are harmless. This is our world in 2020. Ironically, not even the experts can keep pro-lockdown, pro-mask fanatics from harassing and endangering others. If you want to prevent this reality from becoming permanent, stand up to the bullies and stand firm on the science, including voting out politicians who've abandoned science and recalling those who aren't up for re-election in November. Let's see what Alex Berenson have to say. He mentions an incredible study. 615 adults in Tokyo were prospectively recruited to take SARS-CoV-2 antibody tests. When the study began, 6% had antibodies indicating exposure. By mid-summer, 47% did, half the population. Not one person was hospitalized or died. But wait, there's more. Many IgM antibody tests rapidly reverted to negative after being positive, so point-in-time antibody testing almost certainly underestimates exposure. which may be why it is so hard to get over 20% antibody positives in broad population studies. The researchers wrote, this suggests that serological testing may significantly underestimate past COVID-19 infections, particularly when applied to an asymptomatic population. In other words, if you test broadly and rapidly during an outbreak, you will find that a huge fraction of the population has been exposed/infected and is asymptomatic. We have seen this from PCR testing in settings like aircraft carriers, prisons, etc. And as the researchers wrote, these findings should also take into context the epidemiological dynamics seen during this COVID-19 wave. Japan took the atypical step of not instituting a mandatory lockdown. During this time, businesses, restaurants, and transportation were kept open, and public life continued relatively unabated. Nevertheless, the second wave peaked and subsided on its own. The possibility of herd immunity should be considered. If this herd immunity were true, then the remarkably low mortality related to COVID-19 should also be examined. Much like our cohort, which had no reported hospitalizations, clinical severity in Tokyo was low, 31 deaths out of 14 million people. It was Earth all along, yes. Reference to Planet of the Apes. And Berenson concludes, seriously, it is impossible to overstate the importance of this paper. It and the 40-cycle testing put all the pieces together. Let's see, someone called Cousin Lauren makes an interesting point. I think COVID highlights an obesity problem, not a novel coronavirus problem. Japanese are amongst the healthiest in the world. Imagine if our leaders started a health campaign instead of a mask campaign. I was in the mall, the large mall here today. I had some errands, and then I went into Walmart, and I have to say, I just absolutely shocked at how fat people have become. They were fat before, but now they're noticeably fatter, 10, 20, 30% fatter. And this is going to lead to a kind of public health emergency, because that is pretty much the worst thing that you can do to yourself if you don't want to get sick. Let's see, someone called Greg Stein K responded, thank you, Lauren. Everyone knows that comorbidities are what are causing early deaths. So why are the discussions around losing weight, eating better, maybe vitamin D supplementation not happening? It boggles my mind. There was a throne speech in Canada today where the government sets out its agenda, and I don't know, perhaps it would have been useful for the government of Canada to make some sort of mention over the fact that a great many Canadians need to lose weight, and they need to lose it relatively quickly, or else they'll start suffering from all manner of unpleasant and possibly dangerous conditions. And Toby Young writes in Lockdown Skeptics, Brendan O'Neill has written a blistering piece for Spiked in which he urges the British people to take back control, not from Brussels, but from Boris and Dom. Quote, we can't go on like this. We cannot continue to allow the government to control every aspect of our lives. We cannot idly accept that the state has the right to introduce rules and regulations that dictate everything from how long we can stay in the pub to who we can invite to our weddings. We cannot sit back and watch as government scientists use jumped up, fact-like graphs of fear to try to terrify and pacify the populace and prep us for yet another onslaught on our liberties. We cannot just watch and nod as officials shut down more areas of the economy with a stroke of their pen, plunging Britain further into the worst recession on record. This is not sustainable. Something has to give, something has to break. The only important question right now is this: how can we make sure that happens? Well, we're getting into dangerous territory here, aren't we? Because polls consistently suggest that, 70, 75, 80% of people are in favor of all this nonsense. Now, how much they care about it is a different question. But for the vast majority of people in the West now, it would appear that they put social consensus of having the same opinions as everyone else, seemingly. These are more important things to them than liberty. And again, turns out that liberty, love of liberty, freedom, very much a minority pursuit. But Benjamin Franklin made a famous warning about this, that these people who will surrender their freedom for security will end up with neither. As we've seen in the Australian state of Victoria, which is a full-on police state now. And of course, it's amusing to me that in the Antipodes, that is, it is the Labour Party that is pushing this. But this does seem to be bipartisan, because we're getting similar things from a so-called conservative premier, although a progressive conservative in Ontario, and a conservative prime minister in Britain. Okay, let's see. Government pauses plans to allow fans back into stadiums. For me, this was the worst piece of news yesterday. The government has changed its mind about letting fans back in sports stadiums from October 1st. As a Queen's Park Ranger season ticket holder, I miss going to see my team play more than anything else. I was so confident that things would soon return to normal. After all, outdoor transmission of the virus is almost unheard of, that I renewed my season's tickets for me and my son a few weeks ago. I didn't factor in the idiocy of this government. Even the bedwetting Guardian believes the measure is completely unnecessary. I'm sorry to report that Michael Gove is himself a Ranger, or what do they call them? Supporters. In Britain, they don't have fans, they have supporters, which I've always found pretty amusing. Okay, let's see whether anything is happening in the chat. Neil Terry says, watching swimmers waterboard themselves would be pretty LOL. The final frontier. Chad Chadson says, Professor Pohl is always on point. Yo Mama says, going against social consensus can have an economic price. I have seen, maybe this is just a rumor, but the third quarter GDP in the United States is expected to increase by a just stupendous amount, 30% or something like that. Chokokin 666. All Blegs will suddenly realize an entire people cannot be monarchs. There will have to be subjects. Okay. Well, I guess people want to be subjects. The earldom of Sussex. Let's see. Chad Chadson says, Trump says he wishes Harry the best of luck because he's going to need it. Yes. Yes, he is. I wonder if he is going to come back to England with the tail between his legs. The longer he stays in California with this adventurous, the worst things are going to be for him. Donald Robertson says, if alt culture becomes a thing, then KMG would become a big thing. Oh, my favorite, KMG talking about Sparkle. We hate her equally strongly. There's this phrase, apparently, which is used regarding to Megan Mertz's, I don't know, inability to hold on to friends, just looking for, what people can do for her, that she drops these people and has made a habit of doing so. This is referred to as being markled, which I quite like that. So what are we on to now? Oh, yes. Let's talk about anti-Pope Francis, that fatuous Argentinian who is now the head of my church, Roman Catholic Church. Tess Mullins writes in The Remnant, which is a newspaper which I highly recommend. While the U.S. heads towards civil war and the rest of the world decides to whether they keep up the COVID charade or let it fizzle, the head of the Catholic Church makes one more extremely important and highly relevant contribution. Original story from America Magazine, which is a Catholic publication. Well, supposedly a Catholic publication. Pope Francis told a group of parents of alphabet people, children, yesterday that, quote, God loves your children as they are, and the church loves your children as they are because they are children of God, unquote. He did so in a brief encounter with some 40 Italian parents, both mothers and fathers, of alphabet people children after the public audience in the Renaissance courtyard of San Damaso in the Vatican. The parents are members of an Italian association, Tenda di Giannata, or Jonathan's Tent, which welcomes and provides information and formation to alphabet people, Christians, their families, and pastoral workers. As he bade them farewell, the association gave the Pope a rainbow-colored T-shirt with the words, "In love, there is no fear," emblazoned on it. You see, this is another variation on the love is love mantra, which I keep warning you is going to lead to even more terrible things in the future. This was His Holiness, friends, solving just one more of the world's critical issues. One might think that in the current climate, a pope would want to address the violent riots in our cities, or the fact that on month 7 of the 15 days to slow the spread, remember that? 15 days to crush that curve? Many chapels and parishes remain closed and their faithful without sacraments. Maybe a pope would even consider reminding the 76 million Catholics in the United States of the necessity of voting for a pro-life candidate. You might think that, but that'd be silly. Pope Francis realizes a time like this is a time to make sure the world knows the Church's moral compass is so far off base, there's no point in referencing it anymore. The Church loves alphabet people children just the way they are. Fine words, Your Holiness. Would you like to resign yet? You know, the Church has been infiltrated by homosexuals over the decades, and Pope John Paul II made a significant concession to this infiltration when, in the revision of the Catholic Catechism, which he oversaw back in the 1980s, homosexuality was treated as a disorder. You know, it becomes a psychological question. It's not a psychological question. It's a moral question. You know, a lot of people like to laugh at the fact that Mike Pence is apparently in favor of subjecting homosexuals to electric shock. I don't know, I find this horrifying because, again, it is not a medical condition. It is a moral condition. I just, I guess there's just a feeling of despair over Pope Francis, and just a question of wondering just how much damage he is going to do before he dies. How much of the visible church will be left standing. The old church, even unto the 1960s, used to speak of the sin of Sodom as being one of the 4 sins, crying to heaven for vengeance. The others being willful murder, oppression of the poor, and defrauding workers of their wages. So ABC News apparently has a huge scoop here. It's all about QAnon. Now, I can't say that I'm a QAnon supporter. Now, the accusation that people in high positions are perverts and criminals, not all of them, but some of them, that seems logical enough to me. I've given examples in the past. If you look at the amazing case of Jimmy Savile and what he did in Britain over the period of decades while managing to be really so very pally-wally with no less than the Prime Minister, Margaret Thatcher, and Prince Charles, you have to wonder what's up, what's going on. So, according to Chris this is in small, Franciscani, for nearly 3 years, QAnon followers have been feverishly deciphering thousands of cryptic clues and predictions posted online by the shadowy persona of Q. Do we really know that Q actually exists? At the center of a metastasizing movement that experts say is the first far-right extremist conspiracy theory in the modern era to penetrate mainstream American culture and Washington politics. Oh, it's a conspiracy theory, so it must be wrong, as if conspiracies don't exist. Yet a consensus of leading researchers and critics who study and debunk QAnon disinformation told ABC News that a key to identifying Q has been hiding in plain sight for years on a pig farm south of Manila in the Philippines, at least until recently. I would not say that a pig farm south of Manila would be my description of hiding in plain sight. The rapid online growth of QAnon since early spring and a series of trolling incidents that surged through Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok before those platforms began banning QAnon groups and hashtags this summer has sharpened focus on the forces behind this alternative reality game-like phenomenon. At least 24 candidates who have endorsed or given credence to the conspiracy theory or promoted QAnon content, 22 Republicans and 2 independents, have secured a spot on the ballot in the 2020 congressional elections, according to the media watchdog Media Matters, though it remains unclear how many could actually win their races. Last month, one candidate who pollsters say is almost certain to win her heavily GOP district in Georgia, Marjorie Taylor Greene, appeared to rescind her previous support for QAnon. People who believe in QAnon conspiracies have also been associated with a number of strange and disconcerting real-life incidents in recent years. If this is so obviously untrue, so obviously crazy, so completely debunked, why are news organizations like ABC News almost hysterical about QAnon? You know, I constantly see statistics claiming that very large numbers of Black people in the United States believe that the United States pretty much invented crack cocaine in order to destroy Black inner cities, that the United States government synthesized AIDS in a laboratory at Fort Meade, Maryland, again, to devastate Black people. Many, many such rumors, but they don't seem to get the attention that QAnon does. And, you know, when I see these figures, like 45% of the Black population believes this, that would seem to be more supporters than QAnon has. QAnon clothing and posters have turned up regularly at President Donald Trump's campaign rallies since at least 2018. Trump, his children, and several White House staffers have repeatedly retweeted QAnon-linked content online, according to researchers who track the spread of QAnon. As of late August, Trump alone had amplified social media accounts promoting QAnon content at least 216 times, Media Matters reported. Can we get some examples of that? Exactly, because what people who are associated with or linked to QAnon, what they believe, that's a very, broad area. Last month, Trump made his most extensive comments to date when asked about QAnon during a press briefing at the White House. Quote, "Well, I don't know much about the movement other than I understand they like me very much, which I appreciate. I've heard these are people that love our country," unquote. A reporter pressed him about this belief that you are secretly saving the world from the satanic cult of pedophiles and cannibals. Does that sound like something you are behind or a believer in? And Trump responded, "Well, I haven't heard that. But is that supposed to be a bad thing or a good thing? I mean, if I can help save the world from problems, I'm willing to do it. I'm willing to put myself out there." One is consistently amazed and inspired by Trump's ability to flip the script on obvious gotcha questions. And, oh yeah, the Conservative Party of Canada has a new leader. His name is Erin O'Toole, and his Christian name is spelled E-R-I-N, but it's a man and not a woman. And this is from the St. Catharines Standard. Erin O'Toole thought he'd be taking on Justin Trudeau in Parliament this week. Instead, he's stuck in his basement listening to Grimes. There's a picture of the 4 members of the O'Toole family, mom, dad, and son and daughter. must say the sun looks pretty sharp in his suit and bow tie. Um, they're all wearing masks, of course. Mom and three with Canadian flag symbols on them, of course, because submission to mindless authority is it's a core principle for Canadians. Conservative leader Erin O'Toole said his COVID-19 diagnosis is a reminder of the need for vigilance as regions across Canada enter the pandemic's second wave. Speaking to the Star on Tuesday from self-isolation in his Ottawa home, O'Toole said he recognizes that politics needs to be done differently during the global health crisis, even as the House of Commons prepares for an unprecedented pandemic setting. So he was doing the mask, he was doing the 2 meter distancing, and he got it anyway. What does that tell you? So who's got this? He's got it. Pierre Trudeau, Pierre Trudeau's wife. Any of those people get sick? Of course, that doesn't matter. So yes, vigilance. Okay, and let's get to the amusing part of this. O'Toole is passing the time by working remotely, listening to music, and perfecting a pandemic playlist that includes The Smiths, The War on Drugs, and Grimes. Smiths are a popular choice for politicians, at least Anglosphere politicians. David Cameron was constantly talking them up. The choice of Grimes is an interesting one. This strange and rather sad looking woman. Maybe it's the connection with Elon Musk. What do you think there? Because Elon Musk he's all about the future, right? So it's a way of giving, like a heads up to him. But okay. So as I said, the Smiths, popular choice. The War on Drugs. Okay. He's a bit indie, wouldn't you say? Erin O'Toole? So, for those that don't know, the War on Drugs is an American rock band from Philadelphia formed in 2005, and then band members are listed. Founded by close collaborators Adam Granduciel and Kurt Weill, no, not the Bertolt Brecht collaborator, but someone who stole his name. Yeah, you see, I'm not buying this, okay? Because modern politicians are busy people. Mostly they're busy in what's known as news management, where something happened in the news. And let's get everyone together and thrash this out, no matter how long it takes. You understand that no one's going to care about this a week from now, or maybe even tomorrow? No, we have to be on top of everything that's happening. They spend very little time thinking. Exceedingly little time thinking. Okay, so Erin O'Toole, it turns out, is 47 years old, which makes him a little old to be a hipster. I don't believe for a second that Erin O'Toole is listening to Grimes or the War on Drugs. I don't believe it for a second. The Smiths, I don't know, maybe. People tend to be loyal to the music that they listened to when they were in their late teens, early 20s. So Erin O'Toole would have been an adolescent when the Smiths became popular in the late 80s, and the Smiths were far more popular in Canada than they were in the United States. But I was thinking, Grimes, that was a kind of dangerous choice, because he could have got that confused with grime, which he may have heard of. And then, maybe he would have mentioned Stormzy, and then you would have had the headlines, conservative leader in gangster rap shock. That would have been unfortunate. No, you see, they have staffers. So they would find some young man or some woman, probably a young man, and say, I need a list of hip things to listen to, which is going to appeal to a broad cross-section of voters. And yeah, and maybe they have focus group meetings, I wouldn't be surprised if, dozens or hundreds of hours are involved in this. Here's a story from the Mail in 2015. David Cameron today insisted his love for Mancunian megaband The Smiths would never go out. Oh, that's a reference to a Smiths song, Light Will Never Go Out. Despite the group, see, I know about The Smiths. I was listening to them earlier today, as it turns out. Louder Than Bombs, that collection of B-sides and the like, demos. Despite the group banning him from listening to their music, the Prime Minister was given a limited edition t-shirt with a photo of the indie band. Indie band? How many millions of records do you have to sell before you're no longer an indie band? During a trip to Manchester today, frontman Morrissey has attacked Cameron for declaring his love for the group, while bandmate Johnny Marr even expressed his disgust that the Tory leader liked his songs. And here he is holding a t-shirt, very wrinkled, I must say, which is in the dark green, for the Irish, because they're all of Irish descent. Salford Lads Club, it says. Isn't that cute? No, Kurt Cobain drove himself crazy over this, and you cannot decide who your fans are. Very early in his career, before these hit records came out, he was practically begging, frat boys not to listen to his music. Well, you can't choose your fans, but you can take their money. That is the trade-off. After being handed the t-shirt, the PM appeared to take a swipe at the two music stars, quipping, "You have made my day. Thank you very much." He then quoted a famous Smiths lyric, "There is a light that never goes out." Cameron is lucky to have got his hands on the t-shirt, which, with Smiths fans from around the world clamoring to get hold of the Salford Lads Club shirts, which have gone on sale to support local young people. The shirt features a famous photo of the Smiths outside the club in Ordsal, similar to the one pictured on the band's 1986 album, The Queen is Dead. The Salford Lads Club, based on the corner of Coronation Street and Ignatius Way in Salford, is a top destination for Smiths fans. I read a biography of the Smiths a few years ago, and that I just realized, well, what do we know about this Morrissey character? Apart from the fact that his name is Stephen Morrissey and that he's actually from Manchester, I'm very, very suspicious of anything that man said, because he is a fabulist. There's no other way to describe him. I think he's pretty funny, because he is so angry. He is so very angry. And there was a lawsuit from the rhythm section of the band, asking for more royalties, which they got. And the judge had some really memorable comments. Let's see. In a December 1996 legal case against Morrissey and Marr, brought by Smiths drummer Joyce, arrived at the High Court. Joyce alleged that he had not received his fair share of recording and performance royalties from his time with the band, calling for at least £1 million in damages and 25% of all future Smiths album sales. After a 7-day hearing, the judge ruled in favor of Joyce. In summing up the case, Judge Justice Weeks referred to Morrissey as, quote, devious, truculent, and unreliable when his own interests were at stake. Devious, truculent, and unreliable, username available, with the words devious and truculent being widely used in press coverage of the ruling. This cost him a fortune. It cost Marr a fortune as well. You see this over and over again. These, oh no, we're right. We're 100% right. We're not going to offer, we're not going to offer 10% or something like that. No, we're going to hold out for you getting nothing. And then they get severely hurt. Oh, Morrissey has also called on the Prime Minister to stop proclaiming his admiration, saying in 2010, David Cameron hunts and shoots and kills stags, apparently for pleasure. It was not for such people that either Meat is Murder or The Queen is Dead were recorded. In fact, they were made as a reaction against such violence. Or you could just not listen to the words. I think vegetarianism is absolutely absurd, but there are a lot of vegetarians in the music business, and I like some of what they do. I like Morrissey. Of course, one wonders, listening to him both in the Smiths and his solo career, there's a point which happens, not always, but from time to time, where the pathos becomes bathos. You just can't stop laughing at what he's singing. But the king of the political posers in terms of music would, of course, be Barack Obama. This is from Zambia. Oh, this is originally from the Sunday Times. Dubbed the coolest former president, Barack Obama's 2020 Summer Jams playlist has been causing a buzz on social media. The track features 53 of Obama's favorite tunes for the summer, as well as some throwback tracks. 53 favorite tunes. For anyone who listens to a lot of music, cares about popular music, it would be kind of agonizing to come up with 53 names of songs you think are great, but he didn't come up with this list. Of course, he says otherwise. Over the past few months, I've spent a lot of time listening to music with my family. I wanted to share some of my favorites from the summer. As always, it's a mix of genres, yeah, I bet it is, that travels through various eras, something for everybody. He actually said that. I think there is something in here for everybody. Hope you enjoy it. The list is available on music streaming platform Spotify. Obama and his wife Michelle signed an exclusive deal with Spotify last year in June when they announced they would produce a series of podcasts under their Higher Ground production. Gotta get paid. And there's a whole bunch of songs on this list which can only be described as, obscure. Rank and file. Seriously? No. Yeah, you got like everybody in there. You got Frank Ocean for the people who like soul music and the people who like, gay soul singers. Oh, Nina Simone, Chet Baker. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. This is so very calculated. So very, very calculated. And of course, the electronic music, he likes that. Childish Gambino, Donald Glover. Of course, he's very hot. Otis Redding, traditional choice there, Work, Rihanna featuring Drake. Megan Thee Stallion, of course. It's just amazing how Barack Obama just manages, particularly at his age, to stay so on top of this. It's just, he is a Renaissance man, Nobel Prize winner, Spotify playlist curator. Nah, they're lying to you. They're lying to you. I think, I think that's all retrograde, You still see these politicians rolling up their sleeves and loosening their tie. That's all pre-Trump. Trump has his business suit with his red tie and his white shirt, and the tie is up to here. And this is a signifier. And what does it signify? It signifies I'm all about business. And these are, these are difficult times. And politicians pretending that they're regular persons, they're not. If you've ever known politicians, I don't claim to, be an expert in this sort of thing, but I've known quite a number. Some of them I used to know well. And they've all lusted for power from the time that they were quite young, which is not a normal thing to do. Paul Schrader in his commentary track for his movie Autofocus, which I was talking about on the live stream a few days ago, said he was asked this question, does Hollywood make people bad? And he said, no, I don't think it does. I think bad people go to Hollywood so they can be bad. And I thought of this with respect to politicians. Does politics make people bad? And no, I'm rather with Schrader on this. I think bad people go into politics so they can be bad. Oh, what does this say? Masks? No, please don't. Okay, never mind that. I won't go into that. Yeah. So no, they're phony. And I've known people before they got into politics and after they got into politics, and it's just like this, how pompous they got. As soon as, oh, yes, I'm running for this seat, and oh, I'm a terribly important person, and putting on airs, it would be hilarious if it weren't so sickening. My government of Canada announced that, or the Trudeau government, it announced a national daycare program mirroring the one in Quebec. $5 a day it costs in the province of Quebec. What the government is saying here is that we are going to take money from taxpayers so that children will be raised by strangers. This is such an incentive for women to work outside of the home that it becomes almost prohibitive in terms of cost, not for a mother, not to work outside the home if the government is paying for her children to be raised by strangers. And finally, I'm going to talk about something which completely passed me by because no one cares about it except the Canadian media. This is from the National Opinion Center, Scholar Strike, a call to eradicate racial injustice. And it is from Patrina Duhaney and Yahya El-Lahib. And it begins, the scholar strike that took place across Canada on September 9th and 10th received very little coverage across news outlets. That is to say, there's a limit to how much idiocy the media can be expected to print. If no one notices that you're gone from your job, how important is your job? Much of the questions the scholars participating in the strike were asked to consider by those covering the news focused on their reasons for supporting the scholar strike. The array of assumptions about the call for academics to strike and their decision to take such action were evident. As racialized academics and scholars, we wish to debunk any negative connotations that may erupt from participating in the strike, inspired by protests that began among professional athletes in the NBA, WNBA. That one doesn't go second. That one goes last. NHL and MLB co-organizers, Professors Anthea Butler and Kevin Gannon, invited the academic community to engage in a national scholar strike to protest police violence and racial injustices in the U.S. Within days of their announcement, co-organizers Beverly Bain, lecturer at the University of Toronto, and Min Suk Lee, associate professor at OCAD University, followed suit and organized a similar movement in Canada. The two-day national scholar strike is a movement that brought together thousands of educators, students, and other individuals across Canada. It provided opportunities to pause day-to-day tasks and intentionally create space to discuss police brutality and killings of Black, Indigenous, and racialized bodies who also continue to be disenfranchised in various facets of society. How are they disenfranchised? You're given space here, National News Watch, National Opinion Center, to discuss something that no one noticed and no one cares about. Within the academic community, the strike represented an opportunity to reclaim our rights to justice and freedom. Who's denying them to you? While unifying and standing against all forms of conformity. Yeah, the support for Black Lives Matter isn't a form of radical conformity that have been promoted by the neoliberal academia and conservative state institutions. Conservative state institutions. That's a good one. Supporting the strike is a bold statement by academics and scholars who are using their platform to advocate for change. Social, political, and economic change cannot be achieved without the participation of all. It sounds communist to me. Remaining silent risks endorsing fascism, white supremacy, and neo-Nazism. The strike is just the beginning, and the hope is that scholars, academics, students, and society at large recognize the dangerous time we are living in, take a firm stand against all acts of hate and exclusion. So the authors, Patricia Duhaney is an assistant professor in the Faculty of Social Work at University of Calgary. As a researcher activist, she grapples with issues related to race, racism, social construction, and criminalization. Yahya El-Lahib is a longtime disability activist and associate professor with the Faculty of Social Work, University of Calgary. He's co-editor of the Rutledge Handbook of Disability Activism. I remember when Rutledge Kagan Paul was one of the most distinguished imprints in publishing. But I was looking up Patricia Duhaney, and so what's her field? Well, she has a website, and let's see. Her current research aims to capture the lived experiences of Black women who have experienced domestic violence and or have been charged with an offense in the context of domestic violence. This is for Black women who beat up their partners. Is that what it's for? Lived experience, what that means is I'm going to talk about me. I'm going to talk about me, and I'm going to get a bachelor's degree, and then I'm going to get a master's degree, and then I'm going to get a PhD, all for talking about me. Now, it's tough for PhDs to get hired, but if you got a leg up, lived experience, there are few things hotter in academia than lived experience, even though it is all completely tosh. But such is the world in which we live. So final look at the chat. 86 means you are banned from the property. Okay, always with the body, says my trail of disgrace. Chad Chadson says, I worked at the downtown Olympia Safeway for a few years before it was torn down. Kurt Cobain was 86th from that store more than 20 times. They put clear coat over his puke stains to save it. Oh dear. What was he drinking? Mad Dog 2020, something like that. Spooky Tooth, Jonathan Paul. There's a British band from the 1970s. That is quite a diverse choice, Professor Bowl. YT says, Cinnamon, where you got to run to? That is Bob Dylan, I believe. Visionary Companion says, Nina Simone was a disturbed Marie Laveau type. She was angry, mostly about her own predicament as a pronagnthous upstart in an unjust world. She was not an attractive woman, to put it mildly. I would say that she's a highly talented singer and interpreter, though. I'm very fond of her version of the Brecht Weil song, Pirate Jenny or Zeerobber Jenny. Well, that is the show for tonight. I'll be back on the air tomorrow at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. Let's see. And coming up on Theater Thursday, and Thursday is tomorrow, I will be discussing Yasujiro Ozu's 1959 comedy, Good Morning, and on the book club, The Culture of Narcissism on Friday by Christopher Lash. If you like the show or any part of it, I appreciate it if you click on the like button and subscribe to my YouTube channel if you have not already done so. If you would like to contribute to this live stream, which would be enormously appreciated by me at this time of turmoil, my PayPal account is kevin_grace@hotmail.com. Once again, kevin_grace@hotmail.com. If you're Canadian, you can send me money directly through interact@kevingrace@shaw.ca. And I'll leave you with this. In these days of social atomization and civilizational collapse, I do dearly wish that you, my dear listeners and viewers, do manage to form some kind of genuine human connection in order to ease the burden. Good night.